Hi guys, my name is Ahmad Daniel and today I want to talk about pollination. Okay, what is pollination? Pollination is the act of transferring pollen grains from the male anther of a flower to the female stigma. The goal of every living organism, including plants, is to create offspring for the next generation. One of the ways that plants can produce offspring is by making seeds. Seeds contain the genetic information to produce a new plant. Two types of pollination. There are basically two types of pollination. First, self-pollination, and second, cross-pollination. Why? Self-pollination is the primary type of pollination. Cross-pollination is a bit complex. Don't you know what is self-pollination? I think some of you know and some of you don't, right? Okay, let me explain what is self-pollination. Self-pollination is the type of pollination deals with only one flower and hence it is quite a basic type of pollination. When pollen grain from the male part of the flower anther falls directly on the stigma, which is the female part of the same flower, and fertilization occurs. Such a type of pollination is called self-pollination. How is the process? Do you guys understand how the process happens? Let me show you guys how the process happens. This is pollen, this is stigma, and this is anther. One way that can be happen in pollen grains transfer in the same flower. So, from the anther to the stigma of the same flower, this is called self-pollination. Then, if pollen grains transfer from the anther to the stigma, different flower belonging the same plant, this is also self-pollination. The self-pollination proceeds as follows. In plants with open flowers, for example, some gramineous and legumes, the pollination takes place before the flower opens. For barley, for example, it is done before the flower has emerged from the leaf sheath, and in the case of peas and beans, before the flower buds have opened. In plants with closed flowers, for example, peanut, violet, the pollen grows in the anthers and the pollen tubes directly reach the stigma. Adjacent self-pollination also occurs in monoecious plants. It occurs within a plant. The female flowers of a certain plant are pollinated by the pollen of the male flowers of the same individual. Types of self-pollination. Autogamy. This type of self-pollination occurs where the transfer of sperm cell from the pollen grain to the stigma take place within the same flower. Autogamy is possible under some circumstances, like both the anther and the stigma of the same flower should be open. Stigma should be prepared to receive the pollen when released from the anther, and anther and stigma should be close enough. Okay, this is self-pollination. Anther produce pollen grains which contain male gametes. This is ovules, produce female gametes, and stigma receive pollen. When the pollen lands on the stigma of the same flower, it is said to be autogamy. Geitonogamy. This type of self-pollination occurs when transfer of pollen grains from the male part of the plant to the female part of the plant take place in different flowers but of the same plant. It is seen more of a cross-pollination and requires pollination agent, but since it occurs in the same plant, is called self-pollination. It is the pollination between flowers on same plant. The flowers are genetically similar. The flowers perform self-pollination. Example plants of self-pollination: maize and banana. Okay, next we move to cross-pollination. This type of pollination is more complex, as here the transfer of pollen grain occurs from the anther of one flower to the stigma of a different flower. Cross-pollination is also called xenogamy. The movement of pollen grains is cross-pollination is possible through pollinating agents. Pollinating agents can be anything like animals, insects, wings, and some other abiotic and biotic things. Generally, cross-pollination occurs in bright-colored flowers, as their color and odor attracts the insects like bees. Some of the cross-pollination plants are lavender, strawberry, apple, and dandelion. Types of cross-pollination. Two types of cross-pollination. First, pollination through biotic factors like animals, insects, birds, and second, pollination through abiotic factors like wind, water. Pollination through biotic factors involve the movement of pollen grains when they stick to some biotic agents like animals or bees or insects, and as these agents move, the stuck pollen grains get transported to another plant and fertilization takes place. Pollination through abiotic factors involve the movement of pollen grains when the wind blows or water is sprinkled or the rainwater spreads. In wind pollination, pollination occurs through movement of pollen from the anther of one flower to stigma of other flower by the wind. Plants that get pollinated by wind are called wind-pollinated plants. Okay, this is diagram of pollination. As understood, self-pollination have autogamy and heterogamy. In cross-pollination, have abiotic agencies and biotic agencies. Okay, let's see what it means. Anemophily or wind pollination is a form of pollination whereby pollen is distributed by wind. Hydrophily is a fairly uncommon form of pollination whereby pollen is distributed by the flow of waters. Entomophily is insect pollination whereby pollen of plants. Ornithophily is pollination of flowers by and Pteropterophily means the pollination which occurs through bats. Okay, this is summary of self-pollination and cross-pollination. Self-pollination is transport of pollen from the anthers to the pistil of the same flowers or to the pistil of another flower of the same individual, while cross-pollination transport of pollen from the anthers of a certain plant is to the pistil of another plant. Self-pollination occurs in about 1 per 4 of the following plant species, while cross-pollination occurs in about 3 per 4 of the following plant species. Self-pollination is pollinating agent is not necessary, while cross-pollination is pollinating agent is required, such as wind, insect, bird, bats. Self-pollination increases genetic uniformity and decreases genetic variation, while cross-pollination increases genetic variation and decreases genetic uniformity. Self-pollination reduces the gene pool, while cross-pollination maintains the gene pool. Self-pollinating plant species produce limited amount of pollen, while cross-pollinating plant species produce large amount of pollen. Thank you for watching. Bye guys.